Smarter steps forward. It's the title of today. For today. Now, how do you choose what tasks are important to you to do first? Have you ever found yourself staying busy, but not actually taking effective steps forward? Now, I struggled with this literally at least 3/4 of last year because I just kept putting things onto my plate, expected myself to finish them, and I never did. Imagine that. And so I had to figure out, and I did this the very long and very hard way, how to make smarter and more focused decisions forward. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And what I have is 2 methods that I use, or at least try to use and implement in everything that I do as I work on a new project or need to refocus on what I'm doing. Okay? So, talking back on this last year when I would do all of these things and ultimately not make much progress, right? So I had a book that I was writing, real estate, school, leasing, which is a full-time job. I was trying to start a nonprofit. I made a prototype. I made a completely new brand. All of these things, probably even more, including the gym, but that's important. That's like lifestyle, right? But still, all of those things I was trying to do at one time, which is, to me, at the time, I felt like I was doing an amazing job. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 different things that I was doing on top of a relationship at the time, right? I was doing all this stuff. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm a genius. I'm doing all of these things. And I'm always busy. The thing is, I almost never finished any of it or got anything like the nonprofit. I never got off the ground. All I got was a prototype. The business that I made is not even up and running. School I'm not finished with. Like all of these things I ultimately left behind because I was just doing so much and I didn't do the actions properly. I was just doing busy work. So I kept myself busy. It felt like I was doing a lot, and I was doing a lot, but it didn't really move the needle forward for me, right? Ideally, we won't have to deal with that anymore after this. Okay, so there's 2 methods that I like to use when deciding what's the most important for a specific task and how to prioritize each of those tasks. So, the first one, or the overall method, so one's like a subcategory. The first one is a process called bottleneck. Or you can put an ing at the end of it if you want. That's what I was doing, but then I felt like that sounded weird. So we're just gonna do the bottleneck process. And inside that process is a process that I like to call the inversion process. Process. Now, what could that possibly mean? Inversion just means upside down. Actually, I don't know what the proper definition of inversion is, but what we're going to go through first is the inversion process. And what that looks like for this is we take our task or our goal, and instead of trying to figure out what we should do next and just doing things to keep ourselves busy, like I did last year, we look at the most common faults or failures that people have when they're doing a certain thing. So most common faults. So if you're creating a business, there's certain things that most people tend to fail with. If you look at all of those, and we have the internet now, we have internet and AI, you can use both of those to figure out what the most common factors are for failures in a business or failures in school, studying, information, finance, all of these things. Find out what the most common faults are. What fails the most often. Then make a list of those things. And once you make the list, the easiest way to go about it is avoid doing the things that you wrote down. So in a marriage, let's say, one of the most common things that cause a divorce is not being together on the finances. Not like sharing accounts, but they don't agree with their sides of money. So one person's like, oh, we should save. Oh, no, we should spend. Back and forth, that stuff. Not agreeing with money is one of the common reasons for divorce. Now, there's different papers you can look at. You can get the whole list of it. So if you're in a marriage, figure out why most marriages fail and avoid those things. All right, it's very simple and has helped me a lot, especially once it actually clicked in my brain what that actually meant. Okay? Because at first I was like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense. Just don't do the things that most people fail with. But then when you put it in perspective, I like to take action. And when you're figuring out what to take action on, well, and especially when it comes to systems, because I like systems, when you're figuring out what not to take action on, and you have a list of things to avoid and not do, you can think of it as, oh, we should just not do those things, which is a little bit of an action, but ultimately you're just avoiding, right? What you can do instead is, if you don't have anything planned that you're going to do to take action to make progress forward, the best thing you can do is put a system in place to make sure that you avoid them at all costs. So if finances are a thing, make sure you have weekly finance updates, or you're taking time together to think about what is going on with your finances. Again, spending time with each other is one of the other things. Connection and communication is a big thing for relationships in general, but also for marriages. So if you take that, communication, make sure you communicate. Put a system in place to where you make sure you are communicating with the other person. Now, not to use just marriage as an example, when I was creating a proposal that I had, my first idea was, okay, let me make these slides, let me make the idea, and put it on a presentation so that I can show it. I did that the first time. Going over it over and over again, I was like, well, this does not really look that good. And how can I guarantee a specific outcome? So what I did was I went on to the internet and figured out what were the most common mistakes people make when presenting or when making, in this case, it was an app. So what are the most common mistakes people make when making an app for communities to use in an apartment complex? Right? So that's what I did. What were the most common mistakes? Then I got the list of the top 10 mistakes, which the numbers on that for the proposal that I was making was covering like 80% of the risk. So I found out what 80% of the risk was in this case and put systems in place to make sure that I avoided all 80%. So now there's only a 20% likelihood of me for sure failing, which means I cut out a lot of the risk, even though I took a risk. by doing the proposal, making the money marks, and shooting it into the world, I guess. So I covered 80% of the risk. Now that leaves 20% for me to absolutely just mess up, but it makes it pretty hard when you have an 80% likelihood of success, right? So that's the process of inversion. You can use that in pretty much anything you do if you're not sure what to do or what steps to take forward, right? Now, if we look at this in a bottleneck perspective, racing a lot, bottleneck. What does this mean? Well, you have a list of tasks. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. We have a list of tasks, and all of them need to get done. But what is the limiting factor? So if I did 1 and not 2, would I still be able to do 2 later? Or if I did 2 and not 4, would I be able to still continue making progress? So find out what the limiting factor. So if I made the website but didn't put any content in it, would it hold me back? Probably. So you should probably make the content and then make the website. Or if you are, the easiest example I can say is if you're making actual content like a podcast, a video, something for social media. Well, if I decide I want to post things but I have no content, what's the bottleneck? The content, which means I have to go and make the content first and then use that content to make posts, because you can't post without content, right? So that's a very simple one that you can make. Now, if we want to go into a little bit more detail, we can say sales. If you have salespeople and then a fulfillment center, which one is more important? Well, if you have a fulfillment center that's fulfilling all the orders, but you have a lack of salespeople, so they're still selling, but your fulfillment center's not on the back end losing a lot of time, so they're not backed up at all, then you say, hey, let me get more salespeople to sell. Now you have more salespeople, and then all of a sudden your fulfillment center is getting backed up. Well, now what? What's the bottleneck? Well, now it's your fulfillment center, right? Because now you're not able to fulfill the orders in the fastest way possible, which means we need to find some way to systemize this fulfillment center and make it better. So it can kind of go back and forth. If you're trying to grow something, maybe numbers is the issue, you're not growing, right? So you're making content, but you're not making it fast enough. Or you're making a product, but you're not getting it done fast enough to get out to the customers, and customer satisfaction tanks. So you have salesmen, but no customer satisfaction. Well, which one's going to be the most important? You can sell all day, but if no one's satisfied, it's going to take people away from your product. So you probably want to work on your product a little bit. So these are simple methods. It took me a while to learn, and something that's very, very useful to me. So when I'm looking at a new thing that I want to do, so let's say I have a timeline for, in my case, paramedic school. So I'll use a real life example. So I have paramedic school that starts soon. I also have a podcast that I run and a book that I'm writing. And I can kind of use this as a priority level. Well, the book, how often do I want to write in it per week? 1 to 3 times probably. I'm going to have a lot of schoolwork that I have to do, and they have deadlines. So deadlines are important, right? And then the podcast, it's like 1 a day, something like that. So now I have to figure out the limiting factors on all of these, which the book, obviously, I just have to put time aside, so that's not a big deal. But having 1 a day on the podcast, you put the time aside, and I have to set up the camera, record the video, record the audio, upload the audio, get the video edited, and then post it. So there's a lot of stuff involved here. And then paramedic school is probably going to kill me. Let's be honest, right? Because that's a lot of information that I have to take in a relatively short amount of time. But I can bottleneck all of those and list the priorities in each section and work on just those priorities, hit the deadlines, and move forward. Deadlines are very good, especially if you can put self-imposed deadlines, right? Because if you have let's say something in your school and you have a deadline, what I like to do is make the deadline like a week before or like 3 or 4 days before so that I can get it done, move on to the next one, and then have plenty of time to be okay. But self-imposed deadlines, a lot of people don't do because, like, well, they have a deadline, so I can just rush and then get it done right beforehand and be able to move on. Yes, but it's very stressful, and you don't want to be stressed unless you like being stressed. I like being stressed, but I also like having my own deadlines because then I'm in control and not you, right? And that's my favorite thing because I'm insecure. Just kidding. Okay, so those two methods are awesome and I love them, especially the process of inversion. But when it comes to big tasks that I need to break down, I try, especially over the month timeline, if I'm not just repeating something and have a system for it, and I have to figure out what I need to do next, putting up a bottleneck to figure out what is the limiting factor that's holding me back, and then tackling that head on, amazing. I love doing that. And it tends to make you uncomfortable, but it puts you the furthest ahead that you could possibly get out of all the other options. And that is where I think the biggest progress jump you can get is, because if the task makes you uncomfortable, you probably should do it, especially if it's something that you want to do long term, like recording in a public space, which is the bane of my existence because I still haven't done it. Makes me very uncomfortable, but it's also a bottleneck because eventually people are going to get tired of listening to me talk in front of a camera, or at least I would, right? So I should probably start doing that. And I've had people tell me, like, dude, you should record. You're just a big, strong dude. And whatever. I don't believe that. I don't think I'm where I want to be yet. So a little self-conscious. That's okay, right? But it makes me uncomfortable. I probably should do it. I haven't done it. And I'm not being a very good example for whoever's listening to this right now. So don't be like me. I will work on it if you work on it. Okay? So do the things that scare you. And the idea behind what we've been talking about the last week or so, do things that scare you, has been around reducing fear. Because fear, as many people have told me, is a mile wide and an inch deep, which means you take a step in it, it kind of goes away. But you have to get over that fear, that initial, oh my goodness, it looks so wide and I'm too scared to take a step in it, right? So the idea that I have been taking this, or the approach that I've been taking, has been, if we can make everything clear as possible with the 3 to 5 year goal, the year goal, the quarters, monthly, weekly, daily, it makes things a lot less scary because you know more about the subject. And what we understand, we aren't scared of, right? Because when you don't know the outcome of something, that's when you get scared. So the whole approach around this has been to try and make those fear levels go down. Hopefully that has worked for you. It has definitely worked for me, even though I am human. I have my limitations. Although some people say that I'm AI at the gym. But nevertheless, do things that scare you. And if you're too scared to take action on it, sit down and figure out why exactly you're scared. And it makes it a lot easier to take action. I should probably do the same thing. I will do the same thing, actually. So yeah, just do things that scare you. Makes life a lot more fun too.